In this episode, I'm interviewing a dear friend of mine about her previous suicide attempts. We are going to get candid about what helped, what made it worse, and ultimately what she wishes more people knew about suicide. So, trigger warning, we will be discussing suicide attempts in this episode. Welcome to the Suicide Prevention Lady podcast, where we make intervention easy. I'm your host, Dr. Ricky Turner, and I am a suicide intervention expert. Please note, I am the thinky kind of doctor and not a medical professional, so please do not take anything in this podcast as medical advice. Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
Number one, I want to thank you for agreeing to do this. Not everybody is excited to talk about suicide, especially their own dealings with suicide. Right. So for those of you who do not know, Michelle and I met when she was a student in the building I was a hall director in. So super early on. She was this little tiny thing with purple hair. And super adorable. And then I hired her to be a resident assistant. Mm-hmm. So we got to know each other a little bit. But first, do you mind talking about when you first felt suicidal, like in your life, like what was happening? Just kind of describe what it feels like to be suicidal.
The first time, I was 12 years old. Okay. So I was young. I had a very different upbringing. So I was raised by my grandparents, just moved back in with them. I had gone through some homelessness and just not a very stable environment, mm-hmm. and was kind of rescued by my grandparents. And it was a lot of changes.
I don't want to diminish this at all, but I want the opportunity to now refer to you as a rescue pet.
I don't like that.
I've never heard you put it quite. They rescued me. I know they did, but
right.
Okay, keep going.
And so it was a lot of changes for a 12-year-old mm-hmm. To be going through, and it had been happening for a while. And I think in my mind, I didn't know how to really process through what was happening to me, mm-hmm. why all these changes were happening. I started back at a school that I had gone to from kindergarten to 5th grade, and the friends who I'd had no longer wanted to be my friends. And mm-hmm. so it was weird going to a school where you knew everyone and everyone knew you, but you were being treated as the new kid and no one wanted to hang out with the new kid, and you're mm-hmm. weird. And so it was all of these changes at home. I thought I was going back to friends, finding out I didn't have friends. Mm-hmm. And so then it was like, why am I here? Like, why should I be here? No one wants me. Mm-hmm. Like, mm-hmm. It was going through all of these things. And I think also at that time, it was like a weird thing that people like talked about, like in my hometown, like people talked about like cutting and killing themselves and mm-hmm. things like that. It was a very common conversation. And so it was like always kind of in the back of my head. Okay. And so that first time was, I cut a lot.
Okay. Did your grandparents, did they find out about it?
They did, and they put me in therapy.
Okay.
They were like, we don't know what to do here.
Okay. Better than what a lot of people do.
Yes.
That is I would 2 thumbs up. Yes. At least they were like, I don't know what to do. Let me get a professional advice. Do that. There's so many things that they could have done wrong here.
Yes.
Is the deal. And so that's kind of why I wanted to highlight that. Okay. So I am afraid to ask this next question, but we are going to go ahead and go there because this is a real podcast. We're covering the real stuff. So how did that go? Go into therapy, or did it help?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
I was poor. Mm-hmm. And so I was on like state insurance, and so it was whoever the state could afford. Mm-hmm. And I went to a terrible counseling center. That it was for children, mm-hmm. but literally the therapist was just like, you just have anxiety. like, and taught me some grounding techniques that I will be honest, I do still use to this day. One of the things that they taught me.
Okay.
However, that was what it was focused on. We did not talk about all of the changes. We were not trying to figure out why I didn't want to be here anymore.
Right.
You know, or like why I was cutting. We talked about it's just changes. That's anxiety.
Yeah.
Here's some ways to deal with your anxiety.
Yeah. Okay. I am guessing that a lot of people listening to this podcast don't understand cutting.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can speak from experience. I went through an adolescent phase where I wanted to be a cutter, but I couldn't do it.
A lot of people do that. Yeah, I don't get it.
It's a weird thing. It's like, I don't know. It's like, for me, it was trying to find something about my personality, I guess. Like, I didn't really know who I was as a person. Spoiler alert, I didn't figure that out until I was in my 30s. And so, like, it was like different phases. Like, I went through a cigarette phase, and I went through a marijuana phase, and I went through a drinking phase, and then I went through collecting teddy bears. And like, I mean, I just literally anything. I was just like, I need something to make me an identity. And one of them was cutting and burning. And I neither, they hurt was my problem. I didn't want to hurt.
That's the point, though. Like, if you're hurting, you're the one causing the hurt. So, like, in theory, like, other people can't hurt as much as you hurt yourself.
Okay. Okay. That's a neat insight. So this was around 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So where did your next attempt come in?
I was 19.
Okay.
So 7 years later.
Okay. Is this the one in college?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I want to do this a little differently. I want to tell this story from my perspective, and I want to tell the story, her to tell it from her perspective, because like I said, I hired her. She was an RA. I'm sitting in my office, and Michelle I always had my door open. And so Michelle walks in, she's just standing there. And like, I just remember her standing like just, and I was like, "Hi, Michelle." And she goes, "I didn't want to wake up." And I was like, "Okay." And I don't remember exactly what happened after that. I remember asking like what happened, and she told me what she had done, and she did in fact woke up and she was sad. So, and we dealt with that. From your perspective, what happened?
Do you want me to like go back to say like what led to that?
Sure.
I went through a traumatic breakup.
You did. She did.
With what I now know is a very abusive person.
Right.
So I did not at the time realize I was in an abusive relationship. Went through that breakup, and it was like continuous. And so because the guy was like continuously leading me on, and so it was like hurt after hurt after hurt. And again, in my mind, it was the same kind of reasoning, like no one wants me, so like why should I be here?
Mm-hmm.
And it got that night. I don't remember what was said, but basically they did something. They said something. I don't remember what it is at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, they don't want me, so why should I even be here?
Right.
And I took a lot of pills. Mm-hmm. I had some prescription pills. I had Benadryl, Tylenol. I did not like clear myself out. Mm-hmm. But I did take a lot.
Right.
And I did not wake, and that was probably around like 9 or 10 p.m. because I was like, it's cool.
Yeah.
I woke up around like 4:30 the next day.
Yeah, it was in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I know.
And I was not happy about it.
She was not. She was mad that she woke up. And so now at this moment in my career, I was not what you would call a suicide interventionist like I am today. I basically was like, oh shit. I don't know what to do, but we're going to do it. And so one thing you need to know about me, I'm not bad at making decisions, but I might make the wrong ones. So, but it will not be indecision that is the problem. It will definitely be making the wrong decision. So I remember, and I didn't know if you wanted to talk about what you did, but I remember you telling me that you took 2 of everything that was in your cabinet, basically.
Yeah.
And then when we went to look at the cabinet, there were a lot. There were a lot in that cabinet, and so I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, I don't know. I don't know how you didn't get sick is another.
That's
I don't
also
understand.
like I have a sensitive stomach, so I also don't know how I
Yeah.
got sick, or
Right.
it was honestly
Right.
surprising how my body handled it.
Yeah. Yes. So now Michelle and I are great friends, and have been friends ever since she was an RA. But she knows more than anybody some of the stupid things that I've done in the past. Now, we have not prepped for this portion of the interview, so I cannot wait to see what comes out of her mouth. But was I the only person you told?
Yes.
Okay, so I was the only person that she told. At this time, and I gotta hope this policy is dead and buried, but at the time, the policy was if a resident assistant was suicidal, they were to be let go so that they could focus on their own mental health because they were in charge of the like a floor's well-being. And the thought process there was you cannot possibly take care of other people if you're not taking care of yourself. I'm certain part of that was a liability issue as well. No one wanted to be sued for someone's wrongful death if it was stemming from a stressful job. So anyway, it's not the right thing to do. It's quite illegal at this point as well. You cannot discriminate based on mental illnesses. So with that said, from your perspective, I remember some of the things that I did there, but like from your perspective, what did I do that helped you? Let's start there. What did I do that helped?
Honestly, it was like more checking in, which like I will say, like you were a good supervisor. Like you already did that. We had like bi-weekly meetings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you were already very aware of everything that had been happening
Right.
with like that relationship and stuff like that. And so I think it was more like just checking in more often than you would have. I had no idea that I was on the verge of losing my job. And so I guess also kind of keeping that from me was in my mind, a good thing. I know some people would be like, that was a bad idea to like keep that. But I think in my mindset, like, well, all of this, and now my job doesn't want me either. And I love my grandparents. They were great, but like going back home wasn't a great option for me.
Right.
So that would have just made things worse.
Right. So what I chose to do in that moment was I could have lost my job over this. But I chose not to alert my supervisor about it. And basically this was, I can't say anything other than, because I'm a big rule follower. I follow all the rules. But I saw this as, if we take her job right now, which she was a very good RA, but she was a good RA because she cared about the job and she like gave herself to the job. And so it wasn't like it was just a paycheck for her. It meant something to her. Obviously, she ended up getting her master's degree in higher education and continues to work in higher education today. So it felt to me just in my gut, like if I take this job away from her, we are going to lose her. And I couldn't live with myself if I followed policy and lost a life. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna muddy through this the best I know how, and we made it.
We did.
It may have caused some trauma along the way.
A little bit.
But we made it. So checking in was a good thing.
Yes.
Not firing you was a good thing.
Yes.
Okay. Another thing that I did was essentially mandated counseling.
Yes.
Anyway, talk about that.
I think it that point, it was fine.
Okay.
It was when I went back later that counseling was not fine.
Okay.
With them. But because I did not see that one counselor
Mhm.
when you mandated it this time.
The first time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so I think it was okay. Did they like help? No.
Yeah.
But it was like they were very nice. Like I know them personally now, and I know that they are a good counselor.
Yeah.
It was, I think in my mindset, even to this day, like I understand counseling, so like it doesn't really help me.
Yeah.
And even in those moments, I feel like I knew that like this isn't what I need. What do I need? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's not like sitting here talking
Right.
to someone about what's happened or what we can do and things like that.
Right. So getting you through that time, when did you feel it shift where you were no longer suicidal?
It was probably like a few months because it was just a tough time in general.
It was.
And so it was probably a couple of months of just me realizing like I do have people. And I think that's just something that I've always dealt with is like I'm an introvert, I'm lonely, like, but I'm not alone.
Right.
And I think having to like learn that over and over and over again, because in my mindset I'm like I'm alone, like I don't have anybody, but that's not true.
Right.
And so it's constantly telling myself that.
Right.
And so it was a few months before I was like, I'm not alone.
Right. And I know one of the things that we did was you had a loved one that was super important to you at the time. And I remember it was a thing of like we were trying to get it to be like if she reached for the pills again, there would be some sort of barrier there, some sort of reminder as to why we should not be doing this. And so what we did was put a picture of her up on the medicine cabinet. Did that help at all?
I don't think so.
It was just, yeah.
It was just, I mean, I still love that loved one, but like,
right.
I don't think that's what did it. I
Yeah.
think for some people that could be like what stops
Right.
them, but I don't know if that was what it was for me.
And I won't be offended at any point. I'm very open, and you know this, but I am very open at the fact that I have done some wrong stuff before. And I like when I talk to people, I want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, whether it was me, whether it was somebody else, like what made it worse, what actually helped. And so that's why we're kind of digging through this. If you're going through something like maybe it's a child or somebody under your care, and you know that this is something that they typically reach for, I would think locking it up and having like a system of like, okay, well, you need the medicine, I will give you what you need, instead of having it out in the open. At that time, we were just throwing shit at the wall to see what would stick. So, and all I knew was, from my perspective, all I knew was this girl needed to be loved on, and she needed somebody paying attention, and losing her job was not the way to go. Everything else, it was just like, let me dig into a bag of tricks and see if something resonates. And some of it did, some of it didn't. So, all right. So now, would you say that was the last time was that your last suicide attempt?
Yes.
That was when you were 19. Okay. You don't have to reveal how old you are now, but it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. That's rude. But yes, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. That's good. I'm glad. I'm super glad. It's always a good sign. So when I want to talk to people and learn, okay, so how did you go from 19 to now and not have another attempt? Like, what are some things that work for you? either from you or from other people's like what other people do for you, whichever one.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say like I've never continued to have like suicidal ideations.
Right.
Like I feel like when you have those thoughts and they start as early as like mine did, they never really will go away.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to find like not like your reason for being here, but you have to just find like what works for you. Because I have no idea why I'm here. But like
Deal lime.
But you know, I did really enjoy my job. Like
Right.
I have really amazing friends. I now have pets. And I feel like that was like a big thing for me. As soon as I graduated from grad school, like I knew I needed a pet.
Mm-hmm.
And not because like I love animals, but because like I need something that depends on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never be a mother. So like a pet is perfect.
Yeah.
And so I graduated and within 3 weeks I had a pet.
Mm-hmm.
And that lovely cat is still with me today, and he's the best.
Oh wait, no, that one is. Yes, sorry.
He is the best.
I was like, no, sorry. She's got many cats. She has 3 cats and a dog. The one she is talking about right now is the best. He's a good boy. The second one is an asshole.
Is not a good
boy. Not a good boy.
He's feral.
He is feral.
Yeah.
We get into cuss fights.
Yeah. But so that's something that worked for me.
Yeah.
Is like now I have pets. I have living things that rely on me. And so on those days where I am thinking like, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the point of me being here? Mm-hmm. And it's not like, oh, I'm here because I have these cats that take care of me, because somebody will take care of them.
Yeah.
I know that. But also like, I am going to take care of these. Like, yeah. I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I'm going to get out of bed at 7 a.m. when my dog wakes up or when I'm pet sitting and her dog wakes up at 7 a.m.
Sorry.
And I'm going to go and take care of the animals.
Yeah.
And start my day.
Yeah.
And so like for me, like that's a weird thing, like thinking about it now, like it's animals.
But that connection to animals is like people make fun of like therapy dogs or emotional support animals and stuff like that. They're making light of it. Maybe it's because they don't need them. I don't know. But that is a very valid coping mechanism, and so many people need them. So yeah, I think it's great. Yeah. When you were going through that time, was there anything that made it worse? Like when other people...
Not a lot of people knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what like would always make me feel bad is when people would like make fun of how I felt about that relationship. Because for whatever reason, like either like, why are you still upset about that, or things like that. Like people that didn't know that I had like attempted suicide over this, like it was a big deal to me. It might not be a big deal to you. Like that's great.
Right.
Happy
for you.
Yeah. To me, like that was big.
Yeah.
And so it was like when people would make light of the situation around it without knowing what that led to.
Okay.
And then like I mean, you did do something that made it worse. And we still talk about this and we joke about it now, but like
she made it, it's all right. Go ahead, talk about it though. Yeah.
Like so you could work over the summer too. And
we'll never live this down.
She will never live it down.
We'll never live it down.
And that was one of the things is like, you were like, well, I'm not hiring you over the summer because you do need to work on it. Like you do need to go home. You'll get another job. You need to kind of focus on you for the summer and get away from like helping others because that's what the RA job is. It's you are giving a lot of yourself. And summer, people think that it's less busy, but summer's just as crazy.
Yeah.
For residence life people.
It's just a different kind of crazy, but it is crazy.
And so But that summer, I applied for probably like 50-ish jobs, like in my hometown, in the like just the central area, like all the little towns, big towns, and I got one interview out of that, and then they wouldn't hire me because I already had a job for fall. Because I was hired back for fall.
Right.
It was just a break for summer. And so that
on a break.
so that summer was just, it was hard. I had no money, so I couldn't pay my bills. So we had to like ask my uncle for help, and that's always really hard. Because I had to pay my car and insurance and phone. And again, love my grandparents, didn't mind being home, but being home is not always the best thing for me anyway.
I may not have ever been more stressed out than I was that summer. Because I did make the decision that I thought was the best, and I really, like, truly, my heart of hearts thought it was going to be better for you to get away, because the other person was also hired.
Yes.
And so there was like this impetus there, and I was just like, God, it's going to be volatile over the summer. She needs to go and have a break and deal with some things, and then come back maybe refreshed, and maybe that separation will help the next year. That was my thought process. And then it was like, I would check in. Every time I would check in, nope, no job, nope, no. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, please don't let this summer go by and her not get a job. And then it did. And I was like, well, that could have been better.
And like, that's not your fault.
Right.
It was just, I could not find a job. And I will say, like, I'm a little picky. Like, I didn't want to work fast food. So if I could have gone to that.
Yeah.
But I was looking at like retail jobs, and I used to like babysit a lot and all those kinds of things. So I was trying to get back into that stuff. Yeah. And it just wasn't working.
Now, I will say this too. During this time, I do remember a bit of toxic positivity coming out of my mouth too. Do you remember that?
No.
You don't?
No.
So, because I was at such a loss for words, like I was like, I have made this decision, and it is not going the way that I thought it was going to go. And so, oh my God. And so I was like, I don't know what to say to make her feel better. And so I felt very, well, look on the bright side. You have time with family, and you get to be with Sweetie Pie. This is her dog. Like, you get to have a summer with your dog. And, you know, I mean, I was just digging deep, just trying to find literally anything that could possibly spin it. Now, at this time too, she was a bit of a negative Nancy.
A little bit.
Everything was bad. And so like, she would just, like, you could give her a cake and it would have been like, well, it's not the flavor I really wanted. Like, she was just a little bit on the negative side. And so I was trying to bring it up, and I think I was a little, I don't know. It was basically just to make me feel better, which is when a lot of people go into toxic positivity. That's why, is because they are uncomfortable, and they are trying to make themselves feel better by pointing these things out, but it's not necessarily helpful for the other person. So, anyway, okay. So through now, still the feeling come and go, but you have a management system now. You talked about you remind yourself about the pets. What's something that, like, let's say we are on location in Myrtle Beach, if you cannot tell, and you can't tell because you can't see through that window, but there's an ocean right there. So we're on vacation, and let's say these thoughts come to you tonight or something. What would you do for yourself if you noticed that you were like,
It's like, in all actuality, it's been a while. And so I don't know what I would do. I'm not somebody who would like knock on your door and be like, Ricky. But I also like know I would not act on them anymore. And so like I honestly don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good sign. I'm okay with you. And like, actually, it's been so long, I don't know, I'm a little rusty. That's a great thing. Especially with your best friend doing what she does. Because that could have been bad.
It turns out to be a complete opposite of what you were hoping for.
Right, yeah. Like, actually, Ricky, we need to talk. That's funny. All right. Well, is there anything else? I guess if you were to give advice to somebody who has somebody in their life that is, let's go with going through like a breakup or going through a lonely period where this is what they're considering doing. I know, as somebody who has never considered suicide, it's very tempting for me to be like, oh, there's plenty of fish in the sea, all those things. I know not to do that. But what advice would you give somebody who does have somebody around them that they're worried about or that they think might be suicidal because of something like this? What advice would you give them as to how to help?
Listen. So for sure, listen to them. Even if you think, like, even if they were only with that person for like a week and you're like, you weren't in love with them, like you're thinking these things, like, listen to them. Their feelings are valid. So make sure that you are telling them that their feelings are valid. They're allowed to feel the way that they feel.
Right.
Because I feel like that's a big thing, is that when you're in that moment, people are like, well, why would you feel that way? Like, especially for people who have never had those thoughts.
Right.
Like, they just don't understand. But like, you're allowed to have those feelings, but we shouldn't act on those feelings. And so as long as you are listening to your people, you're validating their feelings, and then you're taking them seriously. And now, like, not everybody is going to give warning,
right,
or things like that. There are people who will do it very quietly, but like, things will be different about how they are acting. And so just paying attention and like knowing and taking everything they say seriously when they are in that like moment. And then for a while after. So just because they're happy again, or maybe they have another significant other, or they got a new job and the things are great, it does not mean that they don't still go back to that day, and that they're not still thinking about what has happened and what they could have done differently. So just continuing to take them seriously when they are like saying like those joking things, like it can just be like, we don't joke about that. Like, are you okay? Like, do we need to talk?
Right.
And that's okay, because sometimes it, like, for me, like sometimes I will like be like, oh, haha, this is funny. But then I'm like, is it funny? Like, I have to check in on myself and be like, I don't know. It might not be. And so like, and that's okay. And most people are not going to get upset about that.
Yeah.
And if people do get upset, again, their feelings are valid and they're allowed to be upset about that. But when they go to bed at night, they're going to be like, they asked that question. Like, they did care.
Right.
And that could be what keeps them going one more day.
Right. Agree. 1,000% agree. When somebody is like, if I can tell that Michelle is getting a little bit more down on herself, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but if I can tell that something about her has changed, I mean, I know her history, obviously, but it'll just be we send each other TikToks constantly, it might be, fun or something like that. Or, but a lot of times it's just like, hey, let's go to Costco, or, hey, like, it's not a, hey, do we need to talk? You're getting a little thoughty again? No, that didn't.
Not right now, thank you.
Suicidal thoughty is what I was going for, not the slang thoughty. But it's like, I don't do it like that, but it's more of a, okay, I know she's been in her house for 3 or 4 days and she is not seeing the light of day. We got to get her out. So let's go do something. And so it might be Costco. It might be, when I invite her over to swim, you want to come play mermaids?
I think it's important to note, though, that she does not play mermaids, because she doesn't get her hair wet.
I don't like my hair wet. But I would play mermaids. If you really wanted to play mermaids, I would play mermaids. But something like that, where it's just like a check-in, but it's not necessarily saying, hey, Michelle, are you suicidal? But it's just she's got to get out. Let's just go do something. So that's something that I do. just to reach out, like letting somebody know that there's somebody out there that cares about them and wants to spend time with them, essentially. So, any parting words?
Not that I can think of now.
Okay. So if this episode was helpful for you, if it was illuminating in any way, please share it with somebody who could also benefit. Every like, every share, every subscription, follow, whatever, on whatever platform you're on is super helpful and gets this type of information into more hands. And we are trying to change a culture here and trying to make suicide intervention a little bit more accessible for the average person. So that would be wonderful. If you are looking for a speaker or a trainer, if you want to bring my signature program to your campus, whichever, reach out. My email is Rikki, RIKKI, at stillyourise.com. I would be just thrilled to have that conversation with you. Other than that, on the next episode, I am planning to talk about a strategy that I should have used when she was suicidal. It's the power of using a code word, and talk about lots of different options with this. And it can get pretty funny, but that's kind of the whole point, is to make suicide intervention more accessible. So join us next time so you can intervene with ease.